All right, we are recording. So my joyful project today is to have a conversation with an old friend of mine, Ned Wight. Ned was a longtime director of the Veatch Program, which is the UU grantmaking program based out of the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. And he was briefly my boss when he delayed retirement to serve as Interim Senior Minister at Shelter Rock.
An unexpected benefit for me. An unexpected benefit.
Yes, indeed. So this is the first one of these that we've done, but I had this idea this week of just calling up old friends and looking at conversations of theological interest and just hitting the record button and seeing what happens. So I guess we'll start out, Ned, by just saying, how are things on Long Island these days?
I would say because we are so close to the epicenter in New York City, things are tense here. We have, and Long Island is, for all intents and purposes, Long Island, Metro New Jersey, even close in Connecticut. It's really part of a large area where there's a very high level of concern about high incidence, social distancing, first line, risk to first line people. And as people know from national coverage through Governor Cuomo and others, this is a serious and perplexing times for the body politic. And that's, we feel that viscerally, I think, here in New York.
So what does your day-to-day life look like? You're still in the home, the ancient home.
I've been trying to transition as a retired person since August of last year, and I was doing a lot of traveling to try to avoid having to deal with what am I going to do with my time. Traveling is not an option right now. So for a few weeks, I was sort of lounging around in sweats and basically feeling a little like completely marginal. And then I decided that I really needed to structure my time and to get dressed every morning and make my bed and try to make sure that I was doing something to feed my aesthetic, intellectual, physical, family, friend, all these dimensions of life that were important to me. So I've been trying to structure my days a little bit more, and I think that's been very, very helpful, particularly in this time where otherwise I would just binge watch escapist TV, which I am, of course, doing to some degree anyway, but.
Yeah. So when we were talking about having this conversation, you suggested hope as the topic. So what is the place of hope in your life right now?
Well, it's really very interesting to observe things that come to my attention that cause me to think in a hopeful way. I have to say that, and part of it, I think I'm feeling a little kind of emotionally more, I'm easily moved. I mean, sometimes I'm moved to tears just in peculiar ways. For example, when the Italian people go to their windows with their musical instruments or out onto their balconies and sing opera or national songs or ballads, that kind of outpouring of the collective human spirit gives me hope. And they are in a situation much worse than the situation even that we're currently facing here in New York. I mean, it's building toward that, but in the face of that, to be able to express that kind of outreach to one another in a positive way, I think is a very hopeful sign of the human spirit. I think the reports of teachers who organize auto parades through the neighborhoods where their students live, and the students and the families come out on their lawns and wave to their teachers who are standing up through the skylights of their sunroofs. And I just think that's quite wonderful and a sign of every reason to be hopeful about the human spirit in this time. I think the stories about, and this may be applicable in your context of the church community, the stories of persons, maybe older people like myself, who at some point have been resistant to technology, who say, okay, I'll give it a try. I try to, it's hard to think about old dogs and new tricks, but I'm, try to teach me and let's have it happen. And who discover, much to their delight, that they are more capable than they believe themselves to be. I think the people who organize virtual cocktail hours and family conferences, of which I've already had a number, I think that gives me hope that people will find ways to maintain the bonds of love and friendship that so enrich and give meaning to people's lives. Finally, I think the quirky, creative things that people are doing. I got recently somebody sent me a challenge to say, pick a famous work of art, a painting or sculpture, and using materials and yourselves from your home, replicate that in a way that you think is true to the spirit of the original. And there are, some Dutch masters where the prime subject is now a 5-year-old girl pouring milk into a bowl. I mean, they're fabulous. I have done my own that I'm going to share. Let me show you on my, if I can call them up here. So here, it'll be hard for me to I hope it stays. There we are. So this is, you will recognize this familiar.
Sure.
From the Sistine Chapel. And here is my representation. So that is a hot finger glove on my hand and some stray pieces of paper that I put together. So I commend this. I mean, I think that the outpouring, and this has certainly happened in the arena of musical performers as well,
sure,
who've doing spontaneous concerts and things. So I think the outpouring of the human spirit in creativity is another thing that gives me great. And finally, the thing I'll say before we go into a more dialogic thing is the recurrence of spring. I look out the window and there are the peach trees, William Cullen Bryant's historic peach trees in blossom, and the daffodils and forsythia, and the cardinals and the robins and the swans. It reminds me that we are part of a very long arc of earth and of life, and that putting this in perspective. So those are some of the things.
Right, because the house that you live in is William Cullen Bryant, right?
That's right, William Cullen Bryant, who was a first citizen of New York in the 19th century, was a poet, was a newspaper editor, was somebody that everybody knew, and was a founder of all manner of leading institutions. And he came here from New York City, out here to on the grounds of Cedarmere, where I'm living. He came here for inspiration, as a kind of retreat, and it's still 7 acres of land owned by the Nassau County, and people are still maintaining their social distance. They're coming here, driving, parking their cars, taking their families to walk around the mill pond or down by the harbor, and it still is a place of beauty and refuge.
Other famous William Jennings Bryan is the favored son of Lincoln, Nebraska, and our
that's right.
hospital here. The original building of the hospital is his mansion that he donated back in the day. So it's still the Bryan Medical System.
They are
different people.
Frequently confused, but yes, yep. Well, we'll take that. That's good. How about yourselves? I mean, what are you experiencing as grounds, if any, grounds for hope?
I think we'll talk about this, but the congregation has really embraced a lot of rapid change in a really remarkable way. The week that we closed down the church is probably the most wrenching week I've ever had professionally. I expect 40 years from now that will still be the case. Like you don't go to seminary in order to close down a church building.
Right.
And so we had a Sunday where we were still in the building, but we had announced that we were closing. And so we were in person on Sunday, and then we closed the building on Monday morning. And those couple days were just really, really hard.
Were you doing this in response to a government edict, or
no?
What was the motive energy that was being devoted to this decision?
It was very much a preventative thing. At that point, we hadn't actually had any cases reported in Lincoln. We'd had a couple in Omaha. But it was pretty clear the direction that this was going, that it was either going to be, we're going to close down the building on purpose now under some control where we're able to announce in person, or we're going to do it, frankly, because we have to a week or two later. And so we decided to close voluntarily. But then that Thursday, so 4 days passed, and then Thursday we had what was then a monthly Thursday night Vespers service, and we moved it to Zoom. And I had spent 3 or 4 days just trying to figure out, like, what does this mean for the church, and what does this mean for me professionally and for the staff that I work with. And then I log on to Zoom for that. For that service, and there are 60 screens of all the members of the congregation looking out at each other.
Oh my word.
And folks who, like you said, I would never have guessed would log on to a Zoom call were there participating in worship. And it was a remarkable moment. It was a moving moment to realize, like, oh, right, this thing that we always preach, which is that the church is the people, not the building, is suddenly very, very true, and
visible to you,
right,
in a way, through the miracle of Zoom.
Right.
Fascinating.
And so, since then it's been it's been intense, but it's also been really rewarding to look at how the congregation is really taking time in this moment to connect with each other. I was telling a colleague of ours, the congregants in Lincoln have started making crafts and giving them to each other in return for donations to the church's discretionary fund. So currently we have baked goods, painted rocks, lamps made out of old bottles, cloth masks, and the remainder of the church's fair trade chocolate, which was going to go bad before we went back into the building, have all been just given away. And we sort of, without any intervention from me, the congregation's raised about $4,000 for the discretionary fund in the space of 2 weeks.
How fabulous.
And so seeing folks react like that is really magnificent, because it would be really easy in this moment to say, we need to just retreat into us. We need to take care of just us, just my family, and part of that's necessary. But to see that being paired with a real desire for connection, and a real grace towards each other is remarkable to watch.
Moving, touching.
It is.
I'm also struck by the kind of soul searching that people seem to be doing, partly by necessity or partly by the reality that we don't have a lot of other things to think about, but about to ask ourselves, what do we really need to be happy?
Right.
I mean, to put one could imagine a fictional account of putting the brake on the consumer economy. One could imagine that, but here it is for real. It has happened, and we are forced to ask ourselves, what do I really need now? And not only now, but I think when we're through on the other side of this, what do I need to thrive, both as an individual and in community? I firmly believe that there is going to be there will emerge a significant new normal that is not going to be the status quo ante on the other side of this. And well, first of all, our economy is not going to just bounce back to what it was. And the question of infinite growth and infinite consumption and infinite acquisition, I think all of that has been called into question in a really profound way through this experience.
Yeah. I think, you and I probably had a conversation along these lines years ago, but one of the things that 6 months ago was near to my mind as the crisis of the next 10 years was how to address climate change, because it felt like there was going to have to be some massive moment where we all stopped flying on planes so much.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's an odd moment now of, is this the thing? Like, will one of the effects be that we figure out a new way of being in the world that has a lighter footprint?
I think that the short answer to to those sort of what's going to happen questions are partly, it's really up to us. It is up to us individually and collectively to determine what we want the shape of our living to look like moving forward. I think in a way that we have not taken seriously before, we have some clarity that we have choices here, that we can choose to live more simply. We could choose to live in a different way, and that, I don't think any of us would ever choose this particular sense of social isolation and social distancing, but it does compel us, I think, to ask a host of questions about how do we want to live moving forward. And I mean, I listened. I had I'm a Stanford alumnus, and there was a conference of from the Humanistic Center on artificial intelligence at Stanford a couple of days ago. A multidisciplinary conference, which originally was going to have 800 people in present there, and had an enrollment of something like 10,000 online. And it was a multidisciplinary conference about the impact of COVID-19 on, and vice versa, on all manner of applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, with epidemiology, with search for a vaccine, search for particular drugs that could be helpful, search for clinical ways of dealing with it. And the fact, it gave me an enormous amount of hope that obviously most of the best minds in the country here now and in the world are applying themselves to addressing implications of this pandemic. And that, I mean, for human cultures, apart from whatever political craziness that we might be observing, for the scholars and the engineers and the inventors and the entrepreneurs to be focusing their attention in a collaborative way around problem solving, I thought was very, very hopeful.
Yeah. Do you make any distinction in your thinking between hope and optimism? Is that a difference that means anything in your conception?
Well, I think, I mean, I guess optimism seems to kind of, it's a way of wanting to color the outcome of what's going to happen in a way that makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem of, I mean, it seems to be one of the challenges of optimism is that, you know, people have different imaginings about what would be an optimistic outcome.
Right.
You know, some people might say, well, the return of the economic system to the way it was, that would be my standard for how, that would be, if I were to be completely optimistic about the outcome, that's what I would say. I think hope is more open-ended and more open to possibilities that we may not even be able to imagine at the present time.
Yeah.
I mean, optimism seems to me a more kind of a human, measured, controlling way of looking toward the future. Hope is a fundamental trust that outcomes for the human and the planetary enterprise will sustain that enterprise in some positive way.
Sure.
I mean, I guess it is optimistic to be hopeful.
There is that. I guess I'm thinking of the Victoria Safford piece that starts out, our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, and ends with, we stand there beckoning and calling, telling people what we're seeing and asking what they see.
Beautiful.
It's also, so our congregation here uses the Soul Matters themes month to month. And the theme for April is liberation, which there's a certain irony to that. Soul Matters has very kindly told us that the June theme of play is going to be reworked a little bit before they send it out. But
I hope not. I mean, I mean, anyway.
Yeah.
That's another topic. That should be another topic for you to discuss with someone with play in a time of pandemic.
Yeah, but we have this this theme of liberation starting basically this Sunday, as we're all mostly confined to our homes. And I'm finding it really interesting to think through, what does it mean to talk about liberation and hope here? And for me, some of the stories of this season are going to be really important for that. We have Holy Week is coming right up, and Passover right afterwards, and I have no idea what we're going to do for Maundy Thursday. We had planned on doing a joint something with a couple other churches in town, but that's being reworked right now. But I go back to those stories a lot right now of hope and liberation in moments when that doesn't seem like a possibility.
Well, and I mean, it's important to keep in mind in both of those holiday sequences that there's the death of the firstborn. Mm-hmm. There's Good Friday. There's the crucifixion. I mean, that the hope takes into account and takes very seriously the reality of deep pain and suffering. I mean, it is not, if it's real, it recognizes the complexity of the world in which we live, which includes all of that. Maundy Thursday, I think part of the challenge there might be to mine the kind of meaning. What does it mean to have the humility to wash people's feet?
Right.
What is that? What is the message of? Because if we are not humbled by this pandemic,
right,
and in a way that makes us stronger, but we need. This is an opportunity to reconnect with the limits of our own power, which we have had the hubris to proclaim control the world. And that's, wake up, everyone.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Yeah. And it's
but celebrate that we are nonetheless, we're still here.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the story of most great holidays in that tradition? They tried to kill us. We survived. We're still here. Let's eat. That's
Amen.
the whole of the Passover Haggadah in about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One could make a similar claim for Christianity with the crucifixion and the resurrection and communion, and it's yeah.
So that's actually all the questions and thoughts I had prepped. Anything else we want to touch on?
Yeah, let me see if there's what. Oh, I do want to say that the courage and persistence of the first line healthcare providers and public officials and grocery workers and pharmacists, and all of the people who are in the face of a lot of anxiety, and prison guards, prisoners. There are locuses of extraordinary courage and perseverance, which I think we need to honor as part of what it is in the human spirit that may give us hope. And I think that those we're if this does not change us, collectively, and perhaps individually too, but if this does not change us collectively, we will have squandered a great opportunity for some profound learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that will be up to us, won't it?
It will be up to us. It is, yes.
All right.
I'm grateful to you for setting this up. This is talk about having an event in your day that makes you feel somehow that your life is not completely pointless.
This is great. It's
awesome.
It is. It's good to see you. I've been looking forward to our annual check-ins at General Assembly, and I've been mourning the preemptive loss of that this year. So
this has been a great blessing. And you, I know you continue to be a great blessing to your congregation, and I hope you take in the fullness of what that means at this time.
I learned from some great ministers. I'm gonna stop the recording now. So if you're watching this later, I'll see you in the daily updates, or on Sunday, or on Thursday. This has been Oscar Sinclair and Ned Wight for the Unitarian Church of Lincoln.